So when
I do want to segue in. And I want to cut Miranda off, and I'm ready to go. Sorry, take it away, Miranda. Yeah, where were we last time? All I remember is being
Miranda's
very
trying
drunk.
to tell us.
So when we last met.
The thing that,
My God!
In 1996, Scholastic began publishing Animorphs. Over the next 6 years, Katherine Applegate and her husband Michael Grant, under the pseudonym K.A. Applegate, produced 54 main series books, several spin-offs, and inspired a TV series, graphic novels, and a cult. We can't tell you where we live. We can't even tell you our last names, but we can tell you our thoughts and feelings on this series, book by book. I'm Chris.
I'm Miranda.
I'm Eddie.
And we are the Anidorks.
These may be kids' books, but we discuss dark themes and mature content. There may also be some explicit language. Listener discretion is advised.
So we left off with Ax correctly identifying that Jake had been Yeerk.
Yo!
Jake got hit in the head by a ricocheting bullet and face planted into a jacuzzi full of dying Yeerks. Don't just roll with it, just go with it.
Yeah.
A Yeerk crawled in his head, a Yeerk that used to be in Tom's head and was on his way to being in the governor's head.
Do you think that multiple Yeerks fled to get into Jake's head, or just that
Yeah,
one?
I think it was probably a fight. It was a scramble.
Traffic jam. Yeah.
I think he had to pull rank, right? Like, he's a high up. It's Tamesh 144. What is he?
114?
114? Sorry, I'm dyslexic.
Of the Silknyar pool.
Nice. Awesome.
Pool fellows, as Ax calls
Pool
them.
fellows, as they're known, yeah.
I think
Which
he's
is
trying to
also
make it
going
work.
to be the first fanfic title for my Yeerk buddy cop show called Pool Fellows.
In our last episode, I apparently butchered the last moments of the section that we were reading.
That's true.
And I still don't
remember
know
that.
exactly what I did. But Ax had put his blade to Jake's throat. Ax sells the group on... He convinces them that... And they don't need much convincing, but that Jake is probably
It
the
takes
Yeerk.
a little bit. Jake fights for his, cause. Well, Tamarash 114 does a pretty convincing Jake. But at the end of the day, the biggest thing they feel like isn't convincing is that if he was Jake, he'd be like, no, you guys are absolutely right. We need to be 100% sure I'm not a Yeerk. I will do whatever you want. We get a moment where Ax is describing what it's like when someone gets possessed by a Yeerk, because they're like... He was pretty out of it, but we assumed he just, hit his head or something.
I mean, as I recall, he was,
shot.
thrown onto the ground off Marco. He got shot, thrown off a gorilla. He has lots of reasons to be a little out of it right now.
Yeah.
But take it away, Miranda.
So Ax says it takes a while for the Yeerk to take full control of the host brain, and during that time, the host will be passive. He may even seem to be in a coma. And Jake thinks to himself, I swear, I could have kissed the Andalite right then. I wanted to yell, yes! Yes!
The ecstasy!
Ecstasy!
Ecstasy! Oh my god, I was so close. How did I not get there?
Meanwhile, controller Jake, Tamarash 114, is like, you guys can't possibly believe that. What, all because I made a weird face at Ax? This is ridiculous. And they're like, I don't know how ridiculous it is. So they come up with a plan. They need to keep Jake for 3 days so that the Yeerk won't get to go to the Yeerk pool and soak up Kandrona rays and will wither and die. Or, in 3 days, if that doesn't happen, they'll know it was Jake the whole time and they've just kidnapped their friend.
Which is kind of fun. And what Ax is going to do is Ax is going to morph into Jake and take his place in Jake's home, which everyone acts like is a totally reasonable idea, but Ax has inspired no confidence in me that he will be able to pass himself off.
Yeah, you know what? I just get the sense that Andalites as theater kids is not a thing. They're like the jocks. Selling a character, it's just not really the jock way. As a jock.
I just realized who I imagined Yeerks as whenever we hear their voice. It's Plankton in SpongeBob. I feel like Plankton is a Yeerk.
Tamarash 114 does a real hard job of trying to explain to them that their plan is bad. Even before they're like, we'll have Ax morph and pretend to be Jake, he's like, people actually miss me, unlike Tobias. No offense, Tobias, but
can we like read this one?
Yeah,
this
go for it. Yeah, because
okay.
It's so, if they ever thought this was Jake, what the fuck?
Right. Like, this Yeerk is just freaking out while reading the user manual, and he's like, vamp, damn it, vamp. And he's like, look, I argued, it's like Cassie said, my folks will go nuts. They'll call the police. They'll go on TV asking if anyone's seen me. They'll be putting up posters all over town. I mean, no offense, Tobias, but I have an actual family, not some messed up aunts and uncles who didn't want to be taking care of me in the first place. People will notice if I disappear. I turned to Cassie. Cassie, come on, explain it to them. And I think for this alone, Cassie should dump Jake. I think
because Jake has been saying, "Oh, the Yeerk's doing a great job of pretending to be me," and I'm like, guys, if any one of you can see Jake actually saying this, get him out. He's not an Animorph anymore.
Right. But it's kind of like what I imagine, like an actor who's been in the biz for like a really long time, who like doesn't take it seriously, but just thinks they're an amazing actor, so they don't put in any effort. So they're like, oh, I could do this character. He just sounds jaded. He's not putting in the work. He's not thinking about what an adolescent Jake would say. He's just a weird, like, old person Yeerk trying to relate to kids with a backwards cap.
Yeah.
Hello, fellow youths.
Yeah, so he's sinking fast. He is not pulling off the Jake form.
Right. And so Ax is going to morph him. Everybody's on board. And he walks up to him and he says, I will acquire your DNA now, Prince Jake.
With his many-fingered hands.
With his many-fingered hands, and he touches his head like a little Vulcan mind meld. I think we said that the last time he did this.
So that's what I want to fucking talk about is this has happened before. He has Jake's DNA.
So we know that he was morphing a mixture, right? So maybe he only took bits and pieces of everybody. Maybe he didn't take a full code from everybody. Stop shaking your head.
I don't buy it. You know they can't hear that, Chris. I don't buy it.
The Yeerk's response to the Vulcan mind meld, to having the Andalite's hand placed on his head, is to scream, get your hand off me, Andalite filth.
Yeah.
So maybe this wasn't necessary. Maybe this was a calculated...
Oh, no. I hate that you're good at this. Like, you're going to represent me in law. You're going to, like, when I, like, because, like, fuck
when
off.
you
That's
go on trial for your crimes against the Yeerks.
Right.
I think Miranda's right.
You defending me and attacking the Yeerks.
I think Miranda's right. I also think maybe Ax just wanted the chance to touch Jake.
Prince Jake.
He doesn't get to touch many princes.
Yeah, it's true.
His brother was always like,
dead, stop touching me.
But I like that. I think maybe Ax knows.
All right, I think it's calculated.
Because Rachel says
so
at least now we
that.
know for sure. And Temrush114 again tries to backpedal and be like, what? It's been a really stressful day. You know me. I just drop slurs when I'm stressed. They're gamer words.
Okay. I haven't heard someone say rip G4 again.
Rip G4 again. Fiona Nova, I love you. Please call me.
Jake didn't have anyone to even learn any slurs against Andalites from. Like, he didn't have, like, not that Andalite filth, like, that's one that anyone, but there's
I guess that's this. Yeah, we've all agreed Cassie and Marco and Rachel, having known Jake forever, are going to coach Ax through his 3 days living as Jake, which I wish we had a whole book that was just that.
Oh my god,
I wish we had it.
So they have a problem for a moment. They need a place to keep Jake while they drain the Yeerk out of him, and Cassie says they can't use her barn, even though they use it for literally every other thing they do. They practice morphing in the barn, and she says her dad is in and out of there constantly.
Right, but that's practicing more for an hour, not keeping a child there for 3 days.
Yeah, I have to say, this whole idea about starving the Yeerk, this is the first book where I grokked that it was feasible.
Yeah.
That if these kids were not kids, and they were adults willing to commit a crime, they could kidnap Principal Chapman. Like, that's a thing they could do in the war against the Yeerks.
Yeah, and now that they have Ax, they could literally be using this as a plan, like a strategy for everything. He could be morphing everyone.
He could be morphing a lot of people. And the other thing I think is, how have the Jake family not gone on vacation yet? If
It's
they go
still
to
the
the
school year.
beach, but you're right. I keep forgetting how short this period of time has been. Like it's all in school.
We also don't
But, like-
know that we really don't know how far along the invasion is, and there might just be drone arrays within.
He's also that annoying age of teenager where he could just be like, whatever. I'm too old for the beach. But like, I don't.
You
like,
did that
nobody's
for a
too old
couple
the beach.
years.
Nobody's too old for the beach. I was wrong.
Well, you're also Yeerked now, so
Yeah, that's true.
That's true. We determined that in that Minnesota.
So Tobias suggests a place that he knows, an old shack.
Yeah, Tobias knows of a cute little cabin, very discreet, very cheap.
I have the perfect Airbnb. You're going to
super
love
romantic.
it. It's two hippies. Everything is sustainably sourced. It's great.
I thought it was really strange at first that Tobias was just casually suggesting an old shack he knew about in the woods. Like, where did he learn about this? And then I remembered that he's just
a
flown
bird.
over it.
Yeah.
It's just a bird, yeah.
A bird.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's just a bird.
yeah.
It also
Yeah.
says that there is a note that there is some kind of bird nest in the roof of the house.
He has a family away from the. He has kids.
Oh man, I do not like thinking about that. I don't like thinking about that even a little bit.
He's already
Well-
thought about it canonically in the books, so.
All the other, he's trying
No,
to
it
pretend.
was not a romantic love with price cut, Polly. It was all about those low prices.
See, I think he's just trying to blend in. I think the other hawks were catching on. They were starting to bully him. He was getting little
Hey,
hawk
you're-
swirlies. There was no Hawk Jake to save him. So he had to start pretending to be a regular hawk.
Oh my god. And then, sort of the like, hey, when are you gonna settle down and get married? It's like, well, it's sad. It's very sad.
Yeah, my mate
very
died.
sad.
I'm
Yeah.
actually a widow. And
I'm a
that's how he
widow.
gets out of the fact that he doesn't want to.
He had to fridge price cut Polly.
Yes,
She did get
fridged
fridged a little bit.
Yeah.
She
she got a little fridged.
Do red-tailed hawks, and I know I was the one who did a book report on red-tailed hawks, but do they make nests? Did we learn
so.
that in my
Probably
do
their
not
eggs
know.
somewhere.
I do not know, and
Aries,
I don't.
like
frankly,
eagles. And,
frankly, I don't want to know.
So Rachel wants to tie Jake up in the cabin.
Eddie, do you know what you just did there?
What? What? What did
We're
I
canceled.
do? She literally says we can tie him up.
Anyway.
What? All right, Miranda, please take it away from this filthy
What are
Eddie
you
over
talking
here.
about?
They walk into the woods for like an hour discussing their plan.
So they have this plan. Rachel's going to be first shift with.
Yeah, so they can't leave him alone.
Yeah.
And so they're going to take turns watching him. Tobias is going to be there basically all the time, but he's a hawk, so there's only so much he can do. And then the others are going to take it in shifts.
Tobias does not even get a say. Marco just tells him that he's going to stay there the whole time.
It's pretty true.
Tobias has roller coasters to ride.
God.
We get a little glimpse of the Ax-Jake morph, and it's perfect. It's beautiful. It's like looking in a gorgeous mirror that stutters. And again, they feel like they gave Jake a chance to sort of seem like himself, and again, the Yeerk fails because they're like, here's the Ax morph. And he's like, that's stupid. This isn't gonna work. We're all gonna die. And they're like, you kind of failed, buddy, because if you were really Jake, you'd just be going, shit, I hope this works.
No, but I think if we read between the lines, because it's like they're talking about how it's like a facsimile copy of Jake, and it's like he was a perfect copy of me, like looking in a mirror. I morphed a while back, Ax said. I've been watching the way you walk and move to copy you better. The Yeerk grinned. You may look like me, but that isn't good enough. And this is where my like theater kid analogy, it's like Andalites are just learning about method. Or the method. They're not there yet. They don't have all the,
They haven't learned that that's bullshit. You got to move on. Okay, you got to get into some other things. You got to get into some Meisner.
Right, exactly, right. It's like there's many different approaches, but even still, I think the Andalite acting vocabulary, very limited, much like mine. I only knew the method, and then you said Meisner, and I got scared.
It's cool. I forgot all the other ones.
Do we think that... So if Ax goes undercover here, do you think he's going to lose these like speech things that he does in future books? Do you think he's going to just get better
That's
at...
a hope. but
Yeah.
he would
You know,
learn.
it would be really great to see some character growth there because
So you're saying you don't laugh every single time he does this?
I mean, it's a bucket of yucks, but I don't, I don't want to subject
That's
our
the
audience
that's a
to it.
Yeerk
They're
phrase.
yeah, the Yeerks yuck. Don't yuck Yeerks yum. Anyway.
Well said. Golf
Thank
claps.
you. I practiced that in my head before I said it. What's the most fun word to say?
Syllogism.
Ooh, it's got a lot of turns. It's like a slalom.
We'll do a whole
Slalom's
a good
also
one.
a lot of fun.
Slalom's good.
we'll do a whole mini-sode about fun words
Yeah.
to say. The Yeerk feels very powerful here, even though he's Jake has been tied up by Rachel. The Yeerk is still.
I think that's why he felt so powerful.
Tobias has laser vision. Sorry, continue.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Where are we? Can someone give me a page number?
119, 120. I'm reading the Yeerk is like he has this little monologue. He's gonna have a lot of moments like this throughout the end.
Yeah,
of
it's
the
a
book.
really meaty part for
Yeah.
Temrash 114.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he says here, as Jake describes in his head, the Yeerk is reveling in a fantasy of promotions and power. Within a few hours, I will be back with my kind. I will personally tell. This is a Visser 3 thing to say, is to say personally over and over again. I think he's
It's
done
true.
it. I will personally
Yeah.
tell Visser 3 all I know. It will be the end of your little band. The end! And repeating things like this. Visser 3 will promote me again. It will be the fastest series of promotions ever. I'm already in the 100s. I could rise to the 90s. I will be a sub-Visser. In a few of your years, who knows, I could be a Visser. We didn't know about sub-Vissers.
Does that mean that the second you make it under 100, you're a sub-visser? That sort of seems to be the implication to me.
No.
So everyone is constantly,
take.
there's just,
I said I don't know. I said
I just heard no.
it's a ranking
No.
system then, right?
Yeah, it's but like I mean apparently Visser is a rank.
Yes.
And sub is a
But
rank.
the
and then
numbers
you move
then,
on
yeah.
to Dom Visser and you move up the chain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that Rugrats episode where they're imagining what work is like for some reason. Like the
Oh my god, I love that episode and I think it all the time because go on.
that's what I feel like. That's what the Yeerks are describing.
I'll never forget it though. Like Chucky's dad is a paper pusher, and they think that means having push brooms and pushing papers around a big empty hall. It's so good, and I'm just like, oh, that's kind of is what it's like. When the Yeerk was antagonizing the Andalite for not knowing about the method,
Ax. He has a name.
Ax. Thank you. And the Yeerk has a name too, but I've forgotten it.
Temrash 114.
Temrash 114. That was like a critical slip up for him, like a very particular slip up in that like Marco looked at Rachel and cocked an eyebrow. Rachel looked at Cassie, who sighed and nodded her head. See, that was a stupid way to play it, Yeerk, Marco said. If you really were Jake, you might be frustrated that we wrongly suspected you, but you'd figure the smart thing would be to help Ax play the role. If you were you, so to speak, you'd have to hope Ax pulled it off. And I like that, like, his identity as a team-focused person is what they use to test against.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It was actually a very, like, accurate. It was well put.
Yeah.
I liked it.
There's a lot
I also
of-
like the wordplay of if you were you, so to speak. It's a nice little moment.
It's as like in this part of the book, there's a lot of fun stuff with like we have the ideas we've formed of the characters, but we kind of also have to deal with the ideas that these characters have of each other. Not just because the Yeerk is learning how Jake perceives these other characters, but they're also noticing when Jake doesn't behave like Jake. So it kind of, it's a nice moment in the series where we're kind of catching up.
It's
with
a nice, it's a nice detailed version of that. Like it's a show, don't tell.
Yeah.
It seemed like a hinge point of Cassie being convinced, which Cassie being sort of susceptible to her feelings for Jake, which like, thank God does not get abused in this next section at all. But it's like, there is a worry that Cassie won't be tough on.
Yeah, even the Yeerk thought he was going to be able to exploit it, and Jake was a little concerned too. And he's like, "Please, Cassie, just be tough on me."
Right, exactly. And I think like this was the moment where like I was no longer worried about Cassie as a plot point. Like I was like, no, she saw it.
Do we think that this whole time, because like, Miranda, you mentioned that they're walking away and they're talking about these things at some point, right? Like everyone except Jake. But do we
Not
think
to mention the DMs from Tobias.
Yeah, I was thinking, do you think Tobias is kind of walkie-talkieing between them all? Like,
I know it's just really funny that you say that. Reading it the second time, I felt that very palpably. I was like, stuff is moving very quickly, and the way in which like Jake sees it is the eyebrow raise, but nobody is mind speaking with him.
Yeah.
Like Tobias has shut him out.
Yeah.
I think this kind of ties back to my point about if Ax touching Jake was planned. I think there's been whole conversations that we are just totally not privy to this entire time of how they could try to prove his yeerked or unyeerkedness.
Yeah. This was something I was thinking about as I was reading. Ax always has the ability to thought speak, right? When he morphs
as long as
into...
Oh, yeah, no, I guess, always.
So when he's a human, he can thought speak. He just hasn't been. Right? So he can communicate both with his mouth, but also send thoughts because that's still a morph for him.
God. Yeah, that hasn't come up yet. But yeah, I mean, that's the rule. It's not that humans
lose it as a human.
But also generally when he's morphed human,
sense.
they're all human. So he would be the only one who could thought speak.
Yeah, but it would still be powerful.
Yeah.
Like with him and Tobias being able to like demonstrate things via thought speak silently, like as humans or Andalites. Like
So that also could... We can imagine there's a whole thing that happens here where he's undercover as Jake. That could be useful in those.
Yeah, Tobias could be sitting right outside we know that he's here keeping track, but like Tobias could be walking him answers if he was nearby.
Like they're like, Ax, how was math class today? And Ax has no idea what math class is. Tobias can be like...
Tobias is like, well, you should probably say something about denominators.
Yeah.
Like,
he's feeding him information.
Exactly.
Something weird about the Yeerk being in Jake's head is that the Yeerk can hear Jake's thoughts, but Jake can't hear the Yeerk's thoughts. So there are times where the Yeerk goes quiet because the Yeerk is figuring something out independent of Jake. But the Yeerk can share images with Jake. So I'm on 120 now, just because we're moving around.
Cool.
The Yeerk starts sharing his fantasies, right? He's imagining, the Yeerk's talking about how Visser 3 is going to promote him and he's going to receive all this acclaim for capturing the Animorphs. This is like the first time of a few where this happens, but the Yeerk's sharing this like the vision of this fantasy.
Yeah, he has like a very detailed image of what this fantasy looks like. The images his mind conjured up, they were sketchy, but I saw Visser 3 nodding his head as my Yeerk, still in my body, showed him my friends. They were all bound and gagged and lying helpless on the floor of Visser 3's blade ship. And this is when Jake is like, oh, is he just too overcome with feeling to hide this from me?
With his joy, right. Like, is he so joyful that he can't contain himself?
Or is he doing this to, like, make me feel hopeless?
Yeah.
I think it's the latter. I think that this is intentional. This is a break them strategy. This is like your Handbook 101. Show them their worst fear.
Yeah. Which is the weird thing about, like, most of these last pages are just, like, a psychological game, like almost psychological warfare between Jake and this Yeerk, where they both try to break the other's hope. Like they try
and for some reason, part of his strategy is showing Jake one of his old fantasies, which is that he just wanted to be a sports star.
Yeah, I actually kind of love that little detail. Like he's like, it's just a flex about how anything secret is known by the Yeerk. Like anything that's deep and personal and is an identity molding aspect of yourself, like I have access to as a Yeerk, speaking from experience.
Temrush 114 compares it to opening files on a computer, that he can just like basically open up Windows Explorer in your brain and run through files. And
there's a nice little character note here that in this fantasy of Jake's, he imagines his family and Cassie sitting there with them, and then Tom comes running down on the court and like he throws his arms around him and pats him on the back. This is exactly what I would imagine that Jake would have fantasized about at the beginning of book 1.
Yes.
Right.
Because here's the important thing. He's the pro athlete, not
and Tom. Isn't.
Yes.
Tom is retired.
And as a younger sibling, I will tell you that when you're like 11, 12, you don't just want to succeed. You want your older sibling to fail.
Well, so that you can have I got news for you.
You can be like, everybody thought that I was the screw up and they were wrong. And
Chris, you're also the breadwinner of the podcast right now, so.
Yes, true.
By the skin of my damn teeth, y'all are making it easy. But anyway,
I am a dog walker! I'm going to have the most morphs by the end.
That's true. That's 100%
I'm going to be able to
true.
be all
Your
the
morphs
dogs.
greatly outnumber me.
That whole thing was like a very, like, it's like, oh yeah, Jake the Jock fantasy. But then when he gets shown it by the Yeerk, he's so embarrassed. He says, I felt very small suddenly, very unimportant, very weak. I thought that was such a sad little moment, like being...
Yeah.
That was sad.
Like, it worked.
I mean, if you showed me my versions of that fantasy afterwards, I'd be like, oh, come on, don't be like that. Like, don't show me that.
But
I know all about that.
Especially
like,
when
I
you're
know,
like 13,
and it's not going to
you're
happen.
just-
It's fine. Yeah, like...
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's totally fine.
Yeah.
The other thing I think in my headcanon of this fantasy, he says Cassie's in the stands, but she's obviously bought the team and fired the point guard so that that Jake could actually, because we all know about his playing ability. So to make this plausible,
Yeah,
I
where
just
Juan
think,
and Terry?
Yeah.
where Juan and Terry? They should be on the team. They're named characters.
So I have a bunch of stuff here on this next bit that I want to read. As the Yeerk is explaining, I said before, he said it's like a computer. He says, I own you. I dominate you. You are nothing anymore. Just an echo. Just a ghost haunting the machine of your own brain. Which is horrifying.
I really loved that moment.
Yeah.
I loved it so much. I was like, yeah, it was a level up horror moment. Go on.
And so Jake is like,
You're
oh,
holding
yeah.
your finger like you're about to go on.
Oh, I'm just excited. Jake is just like, oh, well, yeah, you're a screw up who's tied up in the woods. Ha ha, you're gonna be dead soon. And he's like, no, I won't. And Jake's like he's keeping it together, right? And he's like, yeah, you will. We're totally gonna win. You're gonna shrivel up and die. And then out of nowhere, he becomes extremely enraged and just starts shouting in his head, you'll die! You'll die like the others died! You think you'll win? You'll lose! You'll lose! You can't control me! You can't control me! You can't control me!
Yeah.
It really is written there. And it's like,
It's
finally we get some
unhinged.
energy from this kid.
Yeah.
But finally he shows us some energy. I mean, I've been watching this movie, this show, this cinema, this play. Do you guys dominate computer?
I dominate computer.
Do you dominate computer?
Yeah, you both know I don't dominate computers.
I was gonna say, using computer as an analogy and being like, yo, I dominate you like a computer. It's like,
In fairness, the
I go to
software is
computer
probably
for a lot of things.
Yeah, the software is probably the bit I dominate least. When I'm all up in its guts, putting new chips
dominate
in
the
and
hardware?
stuff. Yeah.
Ew.
It can't do shit without me. Where would it be without
Yeah.
me?
I've been on Macs for so long that you just throw them out, which I guess is kind of dummy. But anyway, oh my God, we're at the line.
Silky Menace.
Silky Menace.
Oh, the Yeerk asked, with Silky Menace. That's just what your brother said. At first, shall I show you? Shall I play one of Tom's memories for you? I can feel you cringe. I can feel your fear. Yes, I will. How delightful.
Oh no, I hear that as yes. Yes, I will.
Yes,
There's a pause.
I
There's
will.
definitely a pause there. And it's like he's just talking
there's a
to
period.
himself.
You're right.
Yeah.
No, looking at it, it's
Full stop.
Yes.
The repetition is
will.
so silly.
There's so much repetition here.
Here, enjoy a preview of your future.
been-
Rated PG-13
Yeah, he's pushing
for
a
adult
tape into a
themes and
VHS
violence.
player as he says that.
And weirdly, he calls it a preview of his future, but it is also a rerun of his past.
Of his
because
past.
what
It's
he
syndicated
plays-
Jake. This is syndicated Jake. This
What he
is like-
plays is the breakfast scene from earlier in the book where Tom
Yeah.
says something that would get him canceled and then says
This
that they're
isn't
going to
Jake.
clean up the sharing.
Right, this isn't Jake on CBS, family nightly whatever. This is Jake on TV Land. This
Yeah.
happened ages ago.
Yeah.
This is 2 episodes old.
But this time in the memory, instead of his feelings where he knew he was having this conversation with the Yeerk, he gets Tom's feelings. that the Yeerk has somehow stored and brought with him from Tom's brain.
The idea of like cutting and pasting feelings as an ability is wild. Being able to just like grab those and take them with you is a pretty wild premise.
I mean, I guess in some ways it's the Yeerk's memory too, but it
seems like more than that.
It seems like whoever the Yeerk has possessed, those people or those creatures imprint on the Yeerk. And then also, this is getting a bit ahead, but the Yeerk, while it's possessing Jake, is also imprinting those things on Jake. So it's
Miranda, can you read my mind? Yeerk is Trill.
Oh,
who's
see,
Trill?
You did it at imprinting, and so in my brain, I immediately went to Jacob imprinting on Bella's baby, and like we all thought that was okay for some reason.
Yeah. I was thinking that too. So it's weird that you got that, but
we should do Twilight next after Animorphs.
Oh my God! Yes,
I've never read it.
I'm here for that.
I read the first 3 books when I was 12.
Yeah,
and nothing more.
I saw the movies, but I don't remember them. But Trills are a species on Deep Space Nine, Star Trek, and they need a host. And there's 2 species that live somewhat symbiotically, where like it's a big deal for the host species to volunteer
implanted.
to get a Trill. It's like, it seems like, honestly, I didn't finish Deep Space Nine yet, but it is a wild thing. And I imagine it's very similar to Yeerkiness.
Something I wanted to say that the Yeerks probably have like almost like a handbook for is that like almost like the stages of grief. I bet there are stages of because the Yeerk's going to start referring to like, this is what's going to happen to you. This is how you're going to be after this much time after being Yeerked. I feel like the Yeerks probably have like a set of stages that they look for how their hosts will react to them being in their head, you know?
Yeah, no, I think there has to be some sort of playbook. Like, there has to be a training manual for Yeerks that's like, this is the fastest way to take over most things.
Yeah.
This is how you break their spirit. Just like that movie they made us watch in grade school where the kid has to break a horse and then set it free. Do you remember this?
No.
You know the term, he like breaks a wild pony?
I do remember the movie Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron.
Misty of Chincoteague.
Oh, yeah. This and Fly Away Home will both be... We'll watch those for Patreon content and see how they're.
I want to see Zeus and Roxanne. That's what.
Oh my God! Definitely.
Let's do it. We're doing a movie night. Yeah. We'll do it all in one night. Yeah. It'll be great.
So we hear about the barbecue again, but then we see it as True Tom is experiencing it, and he's just sobbing inside, saying he just wants the Yeerk to leave Jake alone. Like he doesn't want them to go anywhere near him. He's probably trying to bargain the way to.
He says
like you're saying.
Yeah. He says he'll do whatever he wants, just please leave Jake alone. Yeah. And then the Yeerk gets another monologue about how the host always starts out fighting back, but, you know, hour after hour, day after day of not being in charge of their own bodies, they lose hope. And then they just sit in the back of the Yeerk's mind, a shattered creature.
Yeah.
I had a moment while reading this passage, though. Like, they see that they cannot rule their own bodies. The host sees that no one even knows what has happened to him. No one knows he is lost in his own head. And over time, hope dies. The host becomes faint, shattered creature, like your brother. And that just reminds me of, like, getting a full-time job.
It's like everybody keeps seeing me and going, you look great. And I keep going,
I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about?
And the Yeerk at the end of this chapter does a very Samara thing from The Ring. Oh no, Jake's actually warning
3 days.
Yeah.
3 days.
3 days. This Blockbuster video has to go back in 3 days, you guys. We have to watch this tonight.
Even mostly sober, I'm still messing up the ends of these chapters.
So Rachel has first guard shift. Tobias is hanging out. They'd brought some sandwiches and some juice so he doesn't starve to death. I'm not convinced he's not going to die of exposure being in a house with half a roof that's not insulated for 3 days.
Half fallen down mess with a wood floor and log walls and a roof that only covered half the place. It's really a gazebo.
Yeah, they're roughing it. Jake tries out something new where for one sentence he puts, I in quotation marks, because he's eating the sandwiches, but he feels like
But it's not him.
disassociated
He
from
felt
himself.
robbed of the
Yeah.
taste.
I feel like the Yeerk probably has fun like Ax does, trying all these foods, but we don't hear about that.
He manages not to scream taste.
Yeah. There's no Cinnabon.
I find the detail of like Rachel's reading a book on watch with the flashlight, and the Yeerk pretended to sleep, and Jake is really just, what even is sleep when you can't drive? Like, can you like spiritually sleep in a mental way? I mean, this whole thing sounds so disturbingly like sleep paralysis, which is the thing I had to deal with like a bunch in high school, which was so scary and frustrating. But like, it sounds so bad. Like, in a way, I did actually sleep. I was mentally exhausted. I was weary and depressed, more tired than I had ever been in my life, and yet afraid that if I dreamed, the Yeerk would watch my dreams.
Yeah. And he does have the dream where he's a tiger hunting Tom, and then right when he dives to attack Tom, they flip. Is that right?
Yeah.
The Yeerk does observe it, and he says, interesting dream. Very metaphorical.
He's such a villain here. Like, and I love this like figurative tiger moment that's about to turn into a literal one on the next page.
Yes. It makes me wonder if the Yeerk gets his idea from the dream, because then he starts to morph.
That's true.
This whole sequence that's coming up also reminded me of, I guess, kind of like a kid's book or like a nursery rhyme, like The Person Who Swallowed the Fly, where it's like just thing inside of thing. Because what Jake's going to do here is Jake Controller is just going to go through a series of morphs, but he starts as a tiger.
Trying every morph, yes.
Yeah.
That's right. He, perhaps given the idea, like we said, by the dream, he decides to do a tiger morph since Rachel has fallen asleep. So he begins to morph, and he has several strange descriptions, mostly just that he remarks on the sharpness of his claws in a particularly odd way.
Sharp as stilettos, yeah.
Sharp
The
as
fingers were
stilettos.
just as spearing, replaced by curved claws as sharp as stilettos.
He did just go shopping for a birthday present for his mom. Maybe
Rachel
he was
taught
in
him
the
more
shoe
than we
section.
saw. Yeah, it's true.
So he undoes his bindings, he cuts open the rope, and he gets out of there as a tiger. He has a brief moment where he's surprised that the Yeerk can use his morphing ability, despite the fact that we've been watching Visser 3 do this for 5 books.
Yeah, and he's feeling as he's leaving this shack, he's worried that the Yeerk is going to hurt Rachel. Yeerk doesn't. The Yeerk is leaving Rachel because he wants to deliver 4 morph-capable humans as well as 1 Andalite scum to Visser 3. But Jake has this moment where he's trying this, before he realizes that the Yeerk's just going to leave, he's describing how he wants to stop the body, but he says, try as I might, I could not reach my own body any longer.
Ooh,
and that's such a weird thing to think about, that you can't, the feeling of not being able to reach your own body.
Do you guys ever do that thing where you think about moving your arm and your arm doesn't move? And then you're like, wait, how do I do this?
Yeah. You just
It
move
feels
it.
Or like,
that,
wait, I'm
but-
supposed to think that thought in like electrical sparks,
language.
not words.
Yeah.
Like,
I should be speaking in arm. Like, I know we've been leaning on the arrogance of Yeerks to describe their decision making when it comes to dealing with dissenters and all sorts of things. But the idea that he doesn't kill her when he is so cornered, he is literally
he still doesn't think he is.
I hear you, and you're right, but it's like, it is negligence. Like, he really had it out. Like, if he had killed Rachel, I think he makes it home.
I don't know that that's true, because as we're about to see, he gets lost.
Fair point.
Yeah.
He can't find his way. The tiger morph, he can see. He smells humans all around, so
I
there's
agree.
more humans. It's not just Rachel.
I agree, but I think, like, it just doesn't make sense for how dire his situation is and how evil he is.
So he gets out there and gets lost as a tiger. He smells things around.
Yeah,
more
he smells
humans.
those. Yeah, he smells stinky humans.
And he's confused. He's like, even your brain says there shouldn't be people here. I'm checking, I'm reading, I'm looking at the book. Like, it says this is wrong. But so he continues to be lost and he decides to unmorph from the tiger. He says, shut up, slave, at one point.
Yeah, he
That's
yeah, I
also
don't
fun.
like that. Yeah.
Because his plan then is like, okay, well, if I wait until there's the sun, he's like, from your brain, I know that I have to go south. And if I wait until the sun rises, then I'll know where south is. He's like, well, you can't wait as a tiger forever. You only have 2 hours. And he's like, shut up. I'm thinking.
How
Which,
deep in the
mind
woods are
you,
they?
he figures out the 2 hour morph limit faster than any of them. Like, he's like, all right, I won't get you. I'll just morph back to human and I'll morph into another thing.
They walked for an hour
Yeah,
into the woods, a little over an hour.
That's
into
true.
the
They
woods.
did.
It's not that
foreground
deep.
Yeah.
So he gets a brilliant idea. He's going to use the falcon morph and he's just going to get up high so he can see where he needs to go. And as he's morphing, he just gets repeatedly attacked.
Yeah, just bludgeoned.
Yeah.
Like
It's bad.
slashed. And they really do a number on this falcon. There's like a huge gash, like that falcon's not flying today. And so he's forced to morph back.
Not the first
that
time
he
Gash.
doesn't-
No, Gash was book 5. Sorry. I'm confusing our books again.
That's right, because book 5 was extremely vaginal.
And I made you take it out of the description. I'm sorry, Eddie.
Did you? Oh no! Jake tells the Yeerk, it's a great horned owl. Yeerk, for not the last time, will say, "You don't need to tell me. I can read your thoughts."
He's like, when you knew, I knew. You didn't have to say anything.
Jake, sounding very much like a 13-year-old, says, "Oh, but I enjoy telling you." It flies without making a sound. Tobias watches them hunt with them, so he's telling him all about this thing to kind of taunt him. But I just love that opening. "Oh, but I enjoy telling you."
Yeah, it's him getting his Visser on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is when Jake starts to realize that he can get under the Yeerk's skin a little bit. The Yeerk is starting to be a little uneasy.
Yes. Yeah.
And then
One of my favorite moments. This is such a cool moment. Are you about to hit? Are you about to hit it? Then, to my amazement, Cassie's thought speak was in my head, a voiceless voice that seemed to belong in a different life. Sorry, I had to hurt you, Jake, but it was necessary. We realized the Yeerk would try morphing, so we were ready. Rachel only pretended to sleep. We wanted this Yeerk of yours to make his escape when we were most ready for him. So you hang in there, Jake. The forest is full of your friends, which, oh my God, so cute. That's so big. And I think we all just wrote how amazing in that note. But her being able to access him specifically, so many detailed little nuanced questions, such as, did that tip off Ax? Did that tip off Tobias? Was Tobias and Ax trying to ring Jake at home and getting a different answerer? Were they trying to thought speak Jake?
Oh, and he
Because
wasn't responding.
The fact that Cassie broadcast to him in there, is that a broadcast? I'm assuming it's a broadcast. Not that
I'm sure the Yeerk heard it as well.
But there is a world in which he hears it as well through Jake's cognition of the thought speech as it's just it's one of those
I don't understand.
world building
Why would they
questions.
not? You think they attempted before but couldn't reach him?
Well, it's just what happens when you thought speak a person in Yeerk. Like, that's just another
I would have
layer
just
of this
guessed that
question.
both would have heard. But
But could something early on in the first thought speeches that happened have tipped them off? But Jake wasn't morphed, so he couldn't thought speak.
That's right.
So you're saying when Ax and Tobias tried to thought speak to human Jake, there was maybe in those first minutes when he was out of it some sort of wall up.
Yeah, I guess sort of that, or and maybe I'm getting a little confused because the fact that they use the brackets for the Yeerks.
yes,
You mean
the internal conversation happening between the Yeerk and
Exactly.
Jake.
The internal conversation with the Yeerks is in brackets, just like mind speech, which technically speaking, it is not. It is a much more intimate relationship. And honestly, I wish some delineating device or convention.
Something.
Exactly. Yeah. Because it is just it does make you think the same technology is being used. But I think that's what I'm hung up on. So
I don't think it's a technology in this case. I think they're literally just in your brain.
Yeah.
yes, but there is
Like a blanket is what we learned.
Like a
Like a
blanket.
blankie.
Yeah, like a little warm. I want a weighted blanket for my brain.
Jake then feels for the first time that the Yeerk is afraid, and he realizes that it feels good. And there's a kind of thing. Jake's going to start taking pleasure in the Yeerk's fear.
He
and
becomes
also-
sadistic.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's, I guess it is a kind of sadism, but it's also this thing is literally taken over his brain. So it feels like
Oh,
The
yeah.
Yeerk
no,
is definitely
obviously-
sadistic, but Jake is fighting back.
And every moment of bad news for the Yeerk is literal good news for Jake.
Oh,
Like, he
yeah.
can't do anything about that.
I'm lightly teasing Jake at best.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, like, this is self-defense.
The Yeerk is going to
Absolutely.
try to frame Jake's pleasure in his defeat as sadism, though. So it does get kind of like the Yeerk
Yeah,
is
but
like,
it's a last-ditch effort.
Yeah.
And you know what? So much for the tolerant left. No, I'm just kidding.
So then Jake feels the Yeerk searching his memory like a book, not like a computer this time. Going through a list of all the
Searching like a
morphs he
book. So
has.
flipping to the index first.
Yeah. So then what the Yeerk tries next is a wolf morph, because wolves can travel long distances. They have a great sense of direction, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it takes him a little while to land on it. He thinks about bugs.
Yeah, I do like that he enumerated all the morphs one after the other, like dogfish, flea, seagull, dolphin, ant, wolf. There's got to be something not in there. Peregrine falcon. He tried that. So is he missing anything?
Lizard.
Lizard. He's missing lizard.
Yeah.
But he thinks about a flea. He's like, oh, surely the owl won't be able to see a flea. And Jake's like, yeah, but how far are you going to get in 2 hours as a flea?
Yeah, it's true.
But yes, so we land on wolf morph. Good for distance. Like, so they're not going to tire out like the tiger, because that was one of the problems with the tiger, was like he ran for 10 minutes and he got tired.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
the wolf seems to have more of a sense of direction in this climate. Like, it's in its natural habitat,
Yeah.
so it's got kind of an idea what's going on.
Yeah, and interestingly, he draws the wolf as a comparison to the tiger in that the tiger is like a sprint and kill and gets tired very quickly. And the wolf is more of like a marathon runner, but humans are also marathon runners.
It's
like,
true. A human could just walk through the forest, but he doesn't have shoes.
Yeah, but it has been posited that that's like why we're successful at all as hunters, is that we just follow things until they're tired and then we kill them.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So the Yeerk
Yeah,
says that his plan is to jog back to what passes for civilization, because he's got to take a jab there. He'll
It's got to
demorph
be
to
like
human.
a little Fraser Crane about this.
That is kind of what the Yeerk is like.
I think Kelsey Grammer could have
This is
voiced
what
this
passes
Yeerk.
for an omelet in this
Yeah,
city.
yeah.
Yeah, I think Kelsey Grammer could have voiced this Yeerk.
Yeah.
Like,
I think
absolutely.
you said that about Visser 3.
Yes, you did. So he'll go back to the city.
Way back
They're
in
called
book one.
callbacks at this
Yes,
point.
that's what they are,
we're
callbacks.
Yes, we're good podcasters. God damn
We're
it.
testing to see if you remember.
Yes, kind audience. Remember, if you remember, leave a 5-star review to let us know you remember.
And list all of the callbacks that you got in the review. So he's gonna
And I'll put them on my gravestone.
But yes, Miranda's ever growing and not a gravestone. If we're ever going to afford your gravestone, we need to start the Patreon today.
buy Miranda a tombstone.
Yeah, a tombstone that goes off into the sky with all the things she wants
Yeah.
on
The
her
more
tombstone.
things I say, the more Chris is just sharpening the blade. Like, we gotta do this soon. Like,
I either have to kill her or we need to make more money. It's one or the other.
There's a great moment that comes here.
Oh, this is so good.
The Yeerk is talking about how he'll morph into a wolf, he'll go back to the city, and then the friends won't be able to stop him because he'll be human again. And Jake accuses him of being arrogant. He says, "You're an arrogant bunch, aren't you? You Yeerks, I mean." And then the Yeerk says, "Arrogant? Why wouldn't we be? We are the most powerful race in the galaxy, overlords of the taxons, conquerors of the Hork-Bajir, and the Strum and the Mach." We have to talk about how he would pronounce
Oh, the
those.
Strum and the Mac.
Strum.
Yeah.
And the Mac or Mach?
3 S's. I would go with, it's hard to say. I think I'd go mock, but
I
it's
like
probably
Mac.
Mac?
Mock. I hope
Mac
it's
and
Mock,
me.
but I like Mac and me.
Do we
yeah,
learn
yeah.
more about the Strum and the Mach, though? The Mac?
We gotta, right?
Yeah, I hope so.
Someday.
So,
It's our first
yeah.
mention of other alien races, I think.
By name, yeah.
Yes.
No, this is absolutely. We get, I believe, 3 alien species. Oh man, this is such a deep lore dump. Like, just like this is like so good. It's such a rich vein.
It's great when they like, because this is like, hey, we'll give you a little crumbs, but like this book, as it goes on, is like so deep in what's going on. We learn so much.
Yes.
It really is. It really is trying to show us everywhere we'll be going in a different. Like it's. I don't know. This
the
ending
world
is-
opens up a lot in this one. Yeah.
I think the only other aliens we know about are things we've seen Visser 3 morph.
Yes,
which
and
are
also,
essentially like demon whales on the various
We don't know if
planets
those
that
are
they're
whole
on.
races or if those are like a handful of monsters.
Right, they're like, I imagine they're species, but we don't know if they're like civilization oriented.
Right.
As we would deem it.
in book 5, The Predator, we got an alien race that had its shape described to us on the spaceship at the end, but we didn't get a name for it. So maybe this is one of those.
Ooh, could be. Yeah. Maybe it's the Strum and the Mock.
What happens for the Yeerk here in the wolf morph is pretty similar what happens to the Animorphs when they're in wolf morph in book 3. He ends up running into another pack of wolves that have been brought to the Yeerk in wolf
so
morph.
it was fitting that I made a callback, is what you're saying.
Yes, that's exactly. It always is, Chris.
Thank you.
And I think we find out that one of the other Animorphs actually brought the wolves to him,
That's right. Someone was out there howling, trying to sort of alert the other group of wolves that like, oh, there's more wolves here. Oh, look over here. There's enemy wolves.
Yeah, and it worked. The Yeerk, Timrush 114, has a choice to go up against 5 actual wolves or to like give up the ghost and like just let Marco take him back to their little Airbnb.
And he says at one point of the wolves, which is something that I think we've heard Visser 3 talk about before. So many species on this planet, he said to himself. So many balances and connections, everything preying on everything else. Every power is checked by some other power. Every advantage is canceled by some disadvantage. Which I feel like has to be true about other planets besides Earth, but they keep talking about Earth as being particular in this way. I feel like Ax has said something similar.
Yeah, based on what we as people who are alive in 2022 know about what would most likely happen on another planet that could generate life, we have reason to think it would be a vast interconnected web similar to ours. Yeah. But this is a story and it's 30 years old.
Yeah.
So like
interesting. Yeah.
I also think like the idea of balance as the norm could be unique to our situation. Like it could be. It's like monocultures do exist. Like things, like
it could be that every other culture doesn't last for as long and just uses all its resources and runs itself into the ground. And then
and that our world is special in being able to survive extinctions or something like that.
I also feel like it benefits the story this book is trying to tell, which goes back to what you said, Miranda, about it being storytelling, that Earth is exceptional in some way.
Yeah.
Like that is the story that's being told here. Like
because, and like crucially, Earth is exceptional because we want the kids reading this book to feel like they are exceptional and they are part of an exceptional group of people. And they are. And you are. And you are all great kids and
Oh, you're all little blessed stars that fell from the heavens. Yeah, absolutely.
Like Chris said, Marco is going to show up here. He morphs back from being a wolf. And I feel like there's yet another adorable Marco movement here. He shivers, he's cold, and he says, "Look, Mr. Yeerk." I feel like Marco's actually 5 years old here.
So cute.
Look, Mr. Yeerk, it's cold and I'm freezing. I always knew this situation with the morphing outfits was going to be trouble someday. And I feel like there he winks at the camera.
Yeah, he's been saying it. Come winter, we're going to be some sad little animorphs.
Yeah. So come on, let's get back to the shack. For a moment, the Yeerk was so enraged, he was ready to leap at Marco and tear out his throat. But then it works.
Up comes...
Oh, right, yes.
My hot cousin the elephant.
Yeah, looking great with 2 long tusks.
Yeah.
And Marco's like, all right, you want to try something? Try something. You've got a wolf pack over that way, this elephant right here, and more surprises everywhere around you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Not to mention the little GPS tracker that is Cassie as a flea on your back.
And I love that the way that Marco explains this is she did the flea thing, as if this is something that the Yeerk knows about. The flea thing.
You know the flea thing?
He has Jake's memories.
Yes, that's true.
And Jake is the one who used this trick to pretend to not be somewhere by being a flea.
So Jake says at this moment, I realized then that there is a very basic difference between Yeerks and humans. A human will fight even when he knows he can't win. Maybe our species is just a little crazy, but human history is full of cases where a handful of guys would fight an entire army. They'd get stomped, but they'd fight anyway. That's not the way it is for Yeerks. They are ruthless. They will do anything, absolute anything to win. But when the situation is impossible, totally impossible, they stop fighting. They figure that other Yeerks will carry on the fight for them. Different ways of looking at your world.
And the Yeerk is like, he's realized it too. And he's like, this is ridiculous. You shouldn't fight when you can't win. And Jake says, it's foolish, it is crazy, and it's why we will win. And he's kind of right, because the Yeerk thought that the humans stood no chance. In his mind, if they were Yeerks, they'd have all given up. So he couldn't understand that they didn't.
Yeah.
And yet, like, I struggle with this.
I think that the books are, whether it's flawed or not, the books are celebrating
Consistent.
the individualistic part of the Animorphs and also saying that's true about humans, whereas they're constantly put in contrast, or not constantly, but increasingly put in contrast with this, like, horde-like thinking. After Jake makes this distinction, the Yeerk says, "You are fools. It is madness to fight when you cannot win." And it is strange to be hearing that from, like, a slug-like
in your
people
head.
that feel like
Yeah.
they should be underdogs in the galactic
Yeah.
struggles. But anyway, they go back to the shack.
Yeah, we get some antics. Temrush 114 tries several different morphs. He tries an ant. He makes it 3 feet before a colony of other ants start ripping him apart, and he's forced to demorph.
We needed to see that again.
This is the most Plankton part of this
Yeah.
episode. I'm
Yeah.
realizing.
Can someone read what he says here? It's so funny. After he gets ripped apart by ants.
This is a savage planet, he said. We will tame this world when we take it over.
He doesn't.
But I don't think even he believed it anymore.
He resorts to like, we're just going to destroy this planet when we get the chance. Like, he just wants to wipe out all the life forms here.
Which is what said they want to do. Is like, just kill all the life forms that they don't need.
But this is wearing him down. Like, failing
He's-
this many times, like, Jake can palpably feel his arrogance evaporating. And interestingly, just again, sort of meditating on fantasies, like Jake says, he still had fantasies of being rescued, but he couldn't make those fantasies end very well. Even if he was rescued, he would no longer be a big hero who had destroyed the Animorphs.
Yeah. We also get a timeline here. I mean, we already knew that when they went to the hospital mission, it was a Saturday. Turns out it was like around 9 a.m. that Jake got Yeerked. And it's now Monday evening. So he's getting closer to that time when he's dying. The Yeerk's dying. Temrush 114.
He's starting to really struggle. He's having trouble focusing. He tries again to morph into a falcon, and Tobias is like,
lands on his head apparently, and just tackles him to the ground immediately. And then they have like a standoff.
Yeah, he says, if you kill me, you'll kill your friend as well. And Tobias says, yes, I know. And the Yeerk's like, you won't. And Tobias says, right from the start, we've all said the same thing. Better to die than be a controller, Tobias said. But in any case, I don't need to kill you. I can simply put your eyes out. A blind falcon doesn't fly far. He is obsessed with taking the eyes out of things.
Yes,
he's kind of a one-trick hawk.
Yeah.
You know, it's like he's got like one thing he knows how to do, and it's go for the eyes. Go for the eyes.
Yeah, it's also it feels especially horrific in this case.
Yeah, but, like it's something. It's human on human. It's hawk on hawk.
I would have guessed
falcon on hawk.
At the beginning of the series that Tobias would have been one of the more empathetic characters, like Cassie, like maybe second to Cassie. But this whole thing of Tobias having to live as like a bird that's a predator and has to hunt, I feel like it's really, he's willing to make decisions that maybe only second to Rachel is willing to make these like decisions.
I hate to drop like real world things. I guess it's just the damn having, but like Tobias is fodder for radicalization. And I do think he's highly radicalized and polarized in this fight.
I mean, he was the one ready. He was like, yes, I need a quest at the beginning of the series. And like, it is shocking and surprising because he read as empathetic and as insightful and like having depth. And I still think of him as having depth, but he also like, he seems to have some strong energy coming out of It's
it.
a great couple for him and Rachel. Because she's also the soldier.
Yes.
And that is just, I mean, people who feel weak are the people who are most likely to be radicalized by an ideology that tells them they can be strong and that they deserve something.
Strength.
Yeah, like, so...
It's messed up, man. It's just it's so hard to separate how messed up this book series is from the messed up world we live in.
The Yeerk is dying, and it's not great, and Jake sort of mocks him about it a little bit. He's like, it must be 4 a.m, 5 hours left, tick tock. And this is when we get that bit where the Yeerk's like, you're really not a very nice person, are you? Like, it's pretty cruel. I'm dying, and you laugh.
And Jake's like, I'm not cruel. Like, what do you expect? Pity? Like, you incepted me. And he's like, no. And then he breaks his own canon, and he's like, no. That's funny. We don't offer pity. And we don't expect pity. We're the masters of the galaxy, conquerors of the Hork-Bajir, and
I know.
They're like an old married couple at this point.
Yeah. So
how big was the fish? Like,
just so we have this in here, the Yeerk is dying because the Yeerk is almost at the end of 3 days, right? 3 days. If the Yeerk goes without Kandrona rays for 3 days, the Yeerk will die. Like, that's why the Yeerk is starving right now in Jake's head.
Yeah.
Because he's starving, the Yeerk becomes very generous with information in his last minutes, and we get a bunch of lore dumps.
I mean, the Yeerk's just going through withdrawal.
Yeah.
The Yeerk's telling Jake about how much simpler the Yeerk homeworld is. Maybe, like, nowhere near as many species, maybe like 100. And he doesn't understand why they need so many here. And then he starts to give a little more detailed backstory.
Mm-hmm. We Yeerks evolved as parasites, not predators. Unlike you humans, we did not kill to eat. We were peaceful. We took many different species as our hosts. And as they evolved, so did we. Over time, the Gedds evolved. They were a sort of like a monkey, I suppose. We were in the Gedds till the Andalites first came. Some of our people still have nothing better than Gedds for hosts. Till the Andalites first came.
I know. It really sounds like the Andalites might have fucked up a good thing that the Yeerks had going on. Did they come and give them space travel?
We've had that hint before.
Did the Andalites come to wipe out the Gedds?
Yeah, there seems to be some kind of colonial thing happening there, though, where they were...
And also, he's shitting on Gedds. He's like, some of our people still have nothing better than Gedds for hosts. What was wrong with Gedds?
Yeah. It's hard to get a Gedd in life, you know?
In Book 4, The Message, Ax, when he was first meeting the Animorphs, he was telling them there was something he wasn't allowed to tell. They're not allowed to talk. The Andalites are not allowed to talk about what happened when the Andalites and the Yeerks first encountered each other. And it makes me think, Miranda, that you're right, that it's like almost like the original sin kind of thing. Like, the Andalites fucked something up.
And when Jake asks about it, the Yeerk is like, ask your pet Andalite, like ask him sometime. Like, he's like real miffed about it, and he doesn't want to talk about it.
Yeah. Oh my God,
it's true.
Delicious build up to that.
It really is. And it's got to come out next book. We got to hear something about a next book.
I hope
or
so.
I'm going to die.
And finally, we learned that indeed sometimes it is simply that the Yeerk can't contain the images and feelings that he is sharing with a host.
Yeah.
Because
screaming.
As Tamarash 114 withers and dies, he experiences memories. And there's a moment where Cassie comes in and says to Jake / Tamarash 114 that Ax has told them a bit about what it's like when a Yeerk dies and warns him that it's going to be pretty rough.
Yeah. He calls it the fugue. Calls it that. It's so dramatic. I can imagine thunder and lightning, like a piano, like he's sitting at the piano and it's like thunder and lightning.
He literally says the fugue.
The fugue.
It begins.
After going, ah! He cries out in silent pain. And then Jake says, the fugue? And the Yeerk says, the final hours. You will not enjoy it. Although you may learn a great deal. So they're going to teach us a lot about the backstory. You may learn more than you want to. I wish every time he talked the rest of the book, that's what he said.
I wish the whole book, the audiobook should just have that screaming under the background for the rest of the book.
Oh, yeah. This would have been a tough one to listen to.
It's a terrible thing that Jake has to experience, but it is also funny at this moment. So... but I love Cassie.
It is also horrifying.
Yes.
Yeah, Cassie's so good.
Cassie delivering the comfort is what we need.
And it says, she slipped her hand into my hand. I could feel it. So could the Yeerk. But he did not reject this small bit of comfort, even though it was intended for me and not him. And I thought that was such a nice, not nice moment, but complicated moment that the Yeerk is also getting comforted by Cassie. And Cassie must be aware of this. Because especially Cassie is sensitive to all life forms is kind of the idea that we get from her.
For sure. So as he dies, He gives Jake a lot of images. Yeerk pools soaking up Kandrona rays.
Yeah, I'm imagining like Bachelor in Paradise Yeerk edition.
Gedds. He gets to look at the Gedds.
In
He
my
assumes
Gedd, zombie.
they were humanoid, short and stooped, with webbed feet and 3 clumsy fingers. He says he saw them on the mothership last book and didn't know what they were, but
that's
he knows
what we
now.
saw. Okay.
He sees the world as a Yeerk in a Gedd host.
Mm-hmm. The vision
Which
was
is-
dim. The hearing was better. The Yeerk had been excited at getting his first host. He had subdued the Gedd mind with ruthless ease, crushing it with his superior intelligence and will. The memory made me sick. The Gedd's bewilderment, his fear, and the Yeerk's fierce arrogance. And then, like ending a guided meditation, he turns his attention away from the memory and back to the world around me. Wiggle your toes and sense the room.
Allow your breathing to return to normal.
Yes.
I love Cassie in
And
these
Cassie-
moments. Like, she's just...
Yeah,
Yeah.
Cassie's still there. She has an arm around him. She's like 1 hour to go. The Yeerk is super dying.
I feel like for everyone except Jake, everyone watching Jake, it must be such a traumatic experience. And that's why I really want to see it through each of their eyes, because I feel like Marco's been seeing Tobias as this omen of what could happen to him for like all of these books.
And
so
now
far.
we have yet another layer of it.
Yeah.
Like, and now Jake is is he going to look at Jake and see what happens if a Yeerk takes, and he's also going to be reminded of his mom. It's just such an interesting, like, heartbreaking thing to think about. And for Cassie, who has this very close relationship with Jake, like how,
Yeah, because apparently he's like shaking and,
yeah,
and sweating.
It is. Someone said, one of you said it's like withdrawal.
It's also like, something that is a really scary and upsetting concept is the idea of someone not being the person you know them to be in a way that's very intangible, which this makes it like at the very least it's caused because a slug climbed in your ear.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
It's a very uncomfortable thought. And like this ending section more than any other, it's complicated. It's gray. It's fuzzy. It feels like a bad dream. It feels like a nightmare to me.
Yeah.
And like we survive it and we move through it, but it's
There's so
upsetting.
much going on. I mean, he talks about all the memories that he sees, good times and bad times. Jake says there was no memory of love. There was affection, pride, feelings he could understand, but no love the way that Jake understands love, at least.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And definitely no higher forms of love.
Yes. Yeah, not like the Andalites.
Not like the Andalites.
And then, as we saw with Tamarash 114 showing Tom's memory, we start to see bits of memories that seem to be mixed in with the Yeerk's own memories that are from various hosts that Tamarash 114 has had. A-Gedd early on, a Hork-Bajir, another Hork-Bajir who had been forced to attack his own kind, to destroy his own friends as an unwilling slave of the Yeerks.
Yeah.
And Jake says it was more than just memories and that somehow the Yeerk was carrying a small part of the beings that he had inhabited along the way.
It makes me wonder if the Yeerk is carrying them almost like trophies. But for Jake, it's a much more like empathetic experience because we get all of this backstory to the Yeerk, but we really aren't invited to like sympathize or empathize with this Yeerk at all. Really. Like the Yeerk doesn't experience that with the people he's inhabited. Like it's all like a domination thing, and it's all like
Yeah, I wonder because so the metaphor they use, which I feel like has to be an update from the 2011 version, is for these memories being transferred to the Yeerk from the host is like a computer transferring a document onto a flash drive. Part had been permanently transferred to the Yeerk. And I wonder if something about how enmeshed they have to become with
Their host.
the host means that there's a little bit of transference, maybe even both ways.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Interesting. Yeah.
But more importantly, that it's something that they have to carry with them forever in order to do the things they do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, there's no way for them to get rid of it. It might not be a choice. They might be painful memories. They might not want them.
That's true. Yeah.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
if we don't dig into that, if that's the case.
No.
Jake does say, and to my shock, I knew that those parts were now being transferred to me, which is such like a heavy thing that Jake takes on, but also I'm wondering how it affects him as a character going forward.
Yeah.
Because he does feel the weight, like the emotional weight, like the psychological weight of carrying this with him.
Yeah.
So
And then it moves on from people he didn't know intimately to his brother Tom, who this Yeerk also inhabited. And we learn that from Tom's perspective, presumably, like these memories have that texture of being from Tom's perspective, that he had like followed a girl he was interested in to the sharing and like had followed her into a high level meeting thinking she was interested in another boy, which is like, good advice. Don't get jealous. Go home, drink apple juice, orange juice, whatever you need. But he then just like stumbles into a room and Visser 3 is just there and Andalite 4.
Where is this room?
Which, like, yeah.
Because
there's no room. I made up the room, but yeah.
It doesn't sound like it's in the basement, though. It's not underground because they take him underground.
This was on the beach.
Yeah.
This was a Bachelor in Paradise thing.
Yeah, but
absolutely.
Over the dudes.
Is this when Visser 3 learned to take a human morph? Because when he went to the sharing's own center, he went in a human morph in a limo.
That's true.
Here, he's just walking around naked. It's like
he's really not thinking about this. He's checked out. He's probably a couple years away from retirement, and he's like, I'm just trying to like. Anyway, he got grabbed. He got yerked. Tom did.
Yeah,
and he got carried underground to where he was ultimately yerked.
And for some reason, they beat him up.
Yeah,
it's true.
And I guess the idea is that Tom's like this meaty guy who fought back, and
yeah, he had to be subdued.
Yeah,
and he was carried, and he was
the jock to end all
infested.
jocks.
And like the Gedd and the Hork Bashir, this human, my brother, became a part of me. The Yeerk was no longer in pain. It was beyond pain.
And he opens his eyes and he looks at Cassie. And he realizes, oh, I opened my eyes. I looked at Cassie. And he can tell right away that she knows that Jake is back. And then the Yeerk says, so, you win, human. And then he shudders.
It's like, okay, bye. Yeah.
The wildest thing happens that I've been waiting to talk about. Jake starts seeing things like as the Yeerk, and it's the Yeerk dying is what we realize.
This is incredible.
Yeah. And so the Yeerk shuddered. I could feel it, a physical spasm. My vision changed. I felt, it's hard to describe. I felt as if I were seeing through things, into things. Like I could see the front and back and top and bottom and inside of everything all at once. And then I saw it, a creature or a machine, some combination of both. It had no arms. It sat still as if unable to move on a throne that was miles high. Its head was a single eye. The eye turned slowly, left, right. I trembled. I prayed it would not look my way. And then it saw me. The eye, the blood-red eye, looked straight at me. It saw me.
It saw!
Yes.
And then he cries out in silent terror.
Yes.
And
then he looks away, finally.
And when he opens his eyes again,
But this is a
kind of
vision.
glowy and it's fine. Yeah, no, it's the freaking Eye of Sauron.
Yeah, it is.
It's like it's so Lord of the Ringsy.
So
they know where he is now.
Yeah,
I really believe that somebody
he put the ring on by having the Yeerk in his head.
Some sort of King Yeerk knows where he is now.
Yeah.
I believe that.
I read this at first and I thought he was seeing kind of like a vision from the Yeerk inside his head, and that he was somehow seeing the Yeerk piloting him. But something that gets said later on, it seems to become clear that that Jake believes this is something somewhere else, which goes to what you two are saying, that something maybe saw Jake.
The Eye of Sauron may have not seen Jake. It could have been a memory that saw this Yeerk or something like that. But I do get that voyeuristic, like, don't look at me,
I got there too.
Somehow, like, I don't know, the Yeerk god calling him home. I don't know.
Yeah.
So part of the feud.
I thought the creature on a throne that was miles high was just like a weird vision of what it was like for the Yeerk to be. The throne was his inside it, Jake. You know? But I don't think that's right. But that's just how I read it at first. But then what? Do we think this is actually some kind of creature or machine back on the Yeerk home planet or something?
I mean, in my desperate need for more lore, I hope so. I hope it's not figurative. I hope this is something we'll be confronting in a boss battle later. But like...
Yeah, because so if we're following the thing, we were saying it's kind of like... Is this kind of the queen ant of the Yeerks, maybe?
One would imagine. I mean...
The Yeerk mother? The grub mother? I don't know. That's Hollow Knight.
The Yeerk literally crawls out of his ear after this.
Yeah.
Like, it is a slug that died in his head
slug.
and had the kindness to climb out.
I assumed it, like, slid out.
How
Like
would
a
that
bad wax
happen?
plug.
How would that happen? I'm
Get
just
some
saying.
olive oil in there.
So, why do you think that a Yeerk? I think a Yeerk when it dies needs to exit the host, even just for the
Stage
convenience.
left, as all good actors do.
Yes. What would the Yeerk's purpose for leaving the host? What would it be? Like, why not
I
die
can
in the
see
brain?
maybe to leave a vacancy for another year.
For another year.
Oh, yeah, because presumably it could kill. It could certainly cause some kind of problem if it died while like wrapping the brain like a blanket,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I imagine you'd be very sick.
Yeah. So we see a Yeerk die for the first time, I think, at least like watching it die. It says as we watched
Yeah.
it withered and shriveled and became nothing.
And then jump cut to Jake's childhood home. He's eating food with his family, something with pasta and tuna fish. And we have a little scene where we hear a little bit about the hijinks that Ax got up to.
We were robbed of Ax's hijinks, I think.
I agree.
I know.
Like, this book should have been narrated by Ax.
Jake's parents are concerned about him because he's not aggressively gobbling up food like he has been for the last 3
I like
days.
how they accept that as the new normal. Like, when it started happening, it's like, I guess we have a growth spurt coming.
Yeah,
but now
like-
that it's stopped, we're like, whoa, that's weird. Like, you went from eating a normal amount to eating an egregious amount to eating a normal amount again.
Last night you
Who'd have
sat
thought?
here and ate 6 pieces of chicken and kept yapping about how great it was. Then you ate a pie which was supposed to be for the 4 of us. Ax yaps. Jake does not yap, I think. So that
No.
yeah. And Jake hides a smile. He goes, "Of course, Ax the Andalite had played me for 3 days." For 2 hours at a time? How did Ax dismiss himself every 2 hours?
I have
And
to
then-
go stand behind the fridge naked.
He does that now. It's a
As you
puberty
know,
thing.
I do. And then Tom says, "You were a total pig. Chicken, corn, potatoes, or as you kept
Look,
saying,
pick an animal or
potatoes,
vegetable.
toes,
if you're going to call me a name.
potatoes."
It's
To which I, of course,
like-
responded, "Boil 'em, mash 'em, stick 'em in a stew."
So then Jake goes to bed. He doesn't sleep that much because he's afraid that dreams are going to come. He's afraid he's going to have nightmares about the eye that had stared at him from a different universe. So that seems to tell us that eye was somewhere else. That's the line I was looking for.
Yeah.
But then the only dream that comes is one he's been having all book, but it's a little bit different. So in the dream, Jake's the tiger again. His brother is the prey. But in the end, he was his brother and his brother was him. And it seems like that's a continuation of the imprinting that was happening earlier.
Yeah.
He feels closer to his brother.
On the news that night, which Jake now tapes, always.
Yes, yeah.
We hear that the hospital shut down. There's not really an explanation. But Jake seems to think that the Yeerks are like, "Oh, our cover's blown. We can't use this hospital anymore," which I don't think makes any sense.
No, it also,
Because
I think,
only the Animorphs know that it's that. The
Yeah,
Animorphs
yeah,
can't be
exactly.
attacking them constantly. They can get a couple surgeries
Okay.
done.
But Rachel did steamroll out of that place
Yes,
as an
she
elephant,
did
making
destroy,
a huge
like-
hole in the wall.
Yes.
I don't care how good your hospital is. That only has to happen once for you to second guess a stay.
Yeah, the governor's not going anymore.
Yeah.
we also need a book from the perspective of like the mid-level Yeerk who has to like cover up all of these incidents and they figure out how they're going to explain it to the
man.
public.
It's all the Zoomer Yeerks who like have PR jobs
Yeah.
that are like, oh my God, how are we going to make this palatable?
Yeah. Also, it's a new hospital and it's already closing. What is their explanation for
Yeah.
that? And how many hospitals are in this town, like this city?
You know, with the privatization of healthcare, you'd be amazed.
That's true. Yeah. So the next day, Jake does something that he says is kind of stupid and Marco says is kind of stupid. And I also agree. It's pretty stupid.
I think we all agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They go to Cassie's barn, which Cassie's dad walks in and out of all day, apparently. And they borrow her dad's cell phone. Is that an update? Would they have used cell phones in the...
They're pretty rich. He's
90s?
like a vet. He takes calls about the wildlife clinic. He might have had a cell phone.
Yeah, he just gives it out to the kids, I guess. And Jake uses it to call Tom. He goes partially into a wolf morph because he
So
wasn't so
weird.
traumatized by that half morph from book 3 to not do it again. And apparently Cassie's dad has a traceable number. I don't know if they don't mention blocking a number or anything, but he calls
Yeah.
It's true.
Tom and Tom answers on the third ring and says, "Yeah." And Jake says, "I have a message." How do we think that sounds?
Is Tom home? Hi, Mrs. Jake's mom.
Don't ever give up.
Don't ever give up my fat
And then
man.
Tom says, "Come again?"
He just hangs up.
And then everyone's like, "Do you think he understood the words you were saying?" And he's like, he definitely heard. Real quick, your friend's dad's cell phone is definitely not a burner.
Yeah.
It's not.
No.
You don't want to do illegal things on your friend's dad's cell phone.
This is the thing that brings it all down. So Jake wonders if Tom has the strength to hold on, but he says he knows the answer. See, a part of my brother was in my own mind now, along with echoes of a long dead Hork-Bajir and a simple Gedd. I'm glad that he's carrying the Gedd with them. We need more Gedd.
Yeah.
And yes, even a bit of a Yeerk with dreams of glory. Then Marco smiles. He says, "Is it true? Will we win?" And Jake says, "This is a very complicated planet, Marco. That's what I hear anyway. And it's a very strange universe. Anything could happen."
And that is book 6, The Capture. I think
Yeah,
the
we did
capture
it.
is pretty obvious in this one. This one at least has a pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Although
name.
it's a nice dual layer capture where they capture Jake
Yes,
and then
yes,
Jake captures
yes,
the
yeah.
capturer.
The thing I was thinking before was that the setup of this book, that it's implied that like, Jake's thinking a lot about the fact that he might one day have to kill his brother. And
Yes.
I just like the switch that it ends up being that Jake... Because this is really what Jake's thinking about when he's talking about that. He doesn't want to kill Tom, but he wants to kill the Yeerk inside of Tom. But it seems like he's thinking about how he might have to kill Tom. And instead, in the end, he kind of gets to kill the Yeerk inside of Tom. And so it's kind of a
He
fake...
kind of gets to kill Tom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We know that Tom probably just got another Yeerk in his head, but that is what it is. And he gets closer to his brother. The whole book was his fear that he was going to have to kill him, and he ends up having a part of him in his heart forever. Like we often say when we kill our loved ones.
Yes. I will carry some part of you with me always.
It is true. It's like, I can't imagine Tom's next Yeerk being as ambitious as this Yeerk. Like, Tom was blessed at basketball and Yeerk acquisition. He got a young upstart, you know?
And offensive nicknames.
And offensive nicknames, yeah. What do you guys think the verb of this book was? Do you guys have a verb?
Ooh. Tatoes. That's the verb.
I think it's Tatoes. I think it's now yes, you Tatoed me.
Silky menace.
Yes.
Yeah, Silky menace. It's absolutely Silky menace. Yeah.
It's not, it's a description of how he did something. It's an adjectival phrase. But
Yeah. Sometimes that's verb enough for me.
It's Jake's drag name.
Yeah.
Silky menace.
Oh,
Silky
Silky
menace.
menace.
That's why he's talking about stilettos.
Yo! Yeah, we have Marco talking about makeup last book, and now we have Jake talking about stilettos. I think we're in for quite the duo drag show coming up.
Thanks for listening to Anidorks. We'll be back soon with lots more to say. Until the Andalites return, or at least until next time. See you soon.